So you ended up with a job that was creative and technical. What do you think in your early life might have inspired that, before the Korean War when you saw the magazine?
Um, well, my job was probably more creative than technical. Engineers were the people that handled the technical part of it, and in my job, I drew sketches and renderings, not knowing if they were totally feasible or not until the engineers got a hold of it and said, "Oh, you can't do that." But that told me I was reaching out and I'm doing the right thing.
Nice. On some of your more iconic stuff, like the back end of the Charger, what do you think inspired the shapes that you used?
Well, all I actually did was the taillights on both the 68 and 69 Charger. And the 68 was, although I didn't do anything else on the car, it was really designed by a French friend of mine, Richard Sias. And there was electricity in the room. And I was definitely part of that electricity. And sometimes it takes that to make a car happen. And so I didn't literally do anything else besides the taillights on that 68. And they were approaching the date that they had that thing designed by and released into the system, and they didn't have it designed yet. So I went back and I cranked out 2 or 3 little sketches and small thumbnails about that big. And I saw one that was pretty nice, and I made a bigger sketch of that, and showed it to my boss, and he said, "Yeah, that's it. Let's do that." So we modeled it up real quickly, and that became the taillight for the 68 Charger. It had 2 round lights, a stoplight and the turn signal, and the taillight. And then in between was a little tiny triangular-shaped white lens set way back in that you could hardly see, but that was the backup light. And so that was pretty unique. I was trying to play down the backup light and let the 2 taillight pods dominate.
So being creative in a corporate environment, like I read about the long night when you had to if you didn't have the clay model done by the morning, they were going to go with a different version. Like, how did you juggle that creativity and the corporate needs from your supervisors, etc.?
Well, yeah, that's right. That's exactly what happened. I was working 2 hours overtime, and the bosses all left at the regular time. And before they left, they said, "We'll give you 2 hours to make this thing work, or tomorrow morning we're going to scrap it and try something else." And that's when I, just looking at it, I made a pretty major change to it. And that looked pretty good to me. Kind of roughed it out in clay, and in the morning the bosses came in and, "Wow, that's pretty good." And that became the taillight for the 65 Dodge Monaco.
Are there any specific things you can remember that were maybe difficult to move from your drawing to a 3D model or anything else? Like something maybe the engineer said no way on, that you were like trying to push a creative idea that they pushed back on?
Well, you always, when they say you can't do this, well, you come back with an argument that says, well, maybe if you do this, this, and this, we'll be able to do it. There were times when you're directing the modeling. We don't do the modeling. Modelers are all union, and we weren't allowed to touch a clay, except with maybe what they call a small eyeball knife, where you could make lines in the clay to give them the direction on what you wanted them to do. And so sometimes if they say they can't do something, you might make some little changes that kind of add to what they're trying to say, and sometimes it'll work. So it's a two-way street.
Always a little give and take with technical and creative and
Yeah,
what you're
well,
trying to...
technical, they can't give much because they got their standards, engineering standards. It's got to be this way. For example, on the backup light I was telling you about on that charger that was set way back in, the standard was a person 6 foot tall, standing 3 feet back and 3 feet over. With his eyeball, he's got to be able to see the filament of that light bulb projected onto the lens. And that's why when I set that thing way back, like I had to make sure that it met the standard of this guy standing there 6 foot tall, could see the lens. And so those things are set in cement. I mean, you can't change those. It's a government regulation, or certainly a corporate standard.
Sure, sure.